Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. Pakistanis and Kashmiris around the world are observing Black Day today on the second anniversary of India's illegal revocation of occupied Kashmir's special status. Protest rallies, seminars and conferences are being held against New Delhi's unlawful action. Addressing a rally in Islamabad, President Arif Alvi said Pakistan will not hold any talks with India until it rescinds its illegal steps of 5th of August 2019. In his message, Prime Minister Imran Khan said India's state-sponsored terrorism is destroying regional stability. The Afghan government says its forces have repelled 7 Taliban attacks on Herat city. A provincial governor said over 100 Taliban were killed in clashes, including a police chief and 2 members of security forces. But a Taliban spokesperson refuted the government claims regarding the casualties of the fighters. Meanwhile, the group claimed to have captured the Kang district in southwestern Nimroz province. Israel has launched airstrikes on Lebanon in response to the alleged rocket attacks from the Lebanese territory yesterday. The Israeli military blamed the state of Lebanon for the shelling and warned against further attempts to harm Israeli civilians. Yesterday, Israeli forces launched artillery fire into Lebanon. Myanmar's ambassador to the UN has alerted the world body to a reported massacre by the military regime. In a letter, Kyaw Tun told the Secretary General that 40 bodies had been found in northwestern Myanmar in recent weeks, including some showing signs of torture. The general, who seized power in February this year, has denied the allegations. The number of global coronavirus infections has hit another grim milestone of 200 million, with more than 4.2 million deaths. Brazil's caseload has topped 20 million, with its death toll over 559,000. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, 60 more people died from COVID-19 and more than 5,600 tested positive overnight. And in cricket, New Zealand will tour Pakistan for the first time in 18 years to play 3 one internationals and 5 T20s. Pakistan Cricket Board has announced the schedule for the tour starting from September the 11th. In the Tokyo Olympics, Chinese teenager Kuan Hongchen has won gold in the women's 10-meter platform diving on day 13 of the Games. Earlier, Ryan Crouser of the US broke his own Olympic record to take the gold in the men's shot put. China leads the medal standings with 32 golds, followed by the US with 27 and hosts Japan on 21. Those were the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Pakistanis and Kashmiris around the world are observing Black Day today on the second anniversary of India's illegal revocation of occupied Kashmir's special status.
Foreign Secretary Suhail Mahmood, Foreign Office spokesperson Hafiz Chaudhry, Information Minister Fawad Chaudhry, Senator Shibli Faraz and people from all walks of life participated in the rally. The marchers highlighted the atrocities committed by Indian forces in the occupied valley. Speaking to Indus News, Qureshi said India's actions of 5th August 2019 are violative of the Security Council resolutions.
On the 5th of August, India took certain unilateral measures. They were illegal. They were violative of the Security Council resolutions. They are trying to re-engineer the demographic balance over there, which Kashmiris are very disturbed about. and they reject that. They have used all kind of oppression to break their resolve. They have failed. On all counts, they failed.
Protesters called on the international community to hold New Delhi accountable for the gross human rights violations committed in the occupied Himalayan region.
We are here to protest the atrocities that are committed by the Modi government in occupied Kashmir. Every Pakistani child, man and woman stand with the people of Kashmir and extend their support and solidarity to them.
They called on the global community to fulfill their commitment and grant the people of Kashmir the right to self-determination. Manahil Ahmed, Indus News, Islamabad.
Today marks 730 days of the Kashmiris living in open prison since the Indian government stripped the occupied valley's autonomous status. More in this report by our correspondent Manahil Ahmed.
On August 5, 2019, the Indian government revoked Article 35A and 370 in occupied Kashmir. The article had allowed the state a certain amount of autonomy, its own constitution, and a separate flag. It could also bar Indians from outside the state from purchasing property or settling there. India not only snatched all these rights 2 years ago, but also imposed a ruthless curfew and a communications blackout. Thousands of Kashmiris have been languishing in Indian jails since then. Kashmiri activist Mushal Malik said India is trying to change the demography of the disputed Himalayan region.
We became refugees and all our economic, socio-political rights were transferred to the Indians. So basically, India's agenda is to transform this occupational force into not just an Indian colony, but into a mini India. And to do that, they are at very fast pace, changing the demography. They have, in the past 2 years, they have given almost 40 lakh Indians domicile certificates, which is shocking because in the next year or so, this area would become a majority Indian area, an Indian region. And then if they conduct the plebiscite, then naturally Kashmiris will be marginalized, minimized, and they will be a minority. And our entire struggle of right to self-determination will go in vain.
Speaking to Indus News, Foreign Office spokesperson Zahid Hafiz Chaudhry said Pakistan will never accept Indian illegal actions in Kashmir.
The fourth assumption that India made, and again where it went wrong, was that somehow Pakistan will accept India's actions. Pakistan has refused to. And since 5th August 2019, we have launched a diplomatic offensive. We've approached international media. We have approached the global parliament. We have approached the United Nations. We've approached the United Nations human rights machinery. We've engaged the civil society. And in Pakistan also, we see that the government of Pakistan, all state institutions, all political parties, civil societies, and Pakistanis as a whole, they are all on one page. They are all united on the issue of Jammu and Kashmir, and we believe that only resolution of the Jammu and Kashmir dispute lies in full implementation of the United Nations Security Council resolutions.
India's continuing crimes against the Kashmiri people are a solemn reminder to the international community of its collective responsibility to hold India accountable. Manahil Ahmed, Indus News, Islamabad.
And to talk more about this, we are joined by Mr. Mukhtar Baba, a renowned journalist from Indian-occupied Kashmir. Mukhtar, thank you very much for your time at Indus News. Can you please give us an idea of the lives of the people in occupied Kashmir for the past 2 years since the revocation of Article 370?
Thank you for having me here. Let me tell you that the situation there is miserable from 5th August 2019, and it had been 2 years from 2019. The government of India is coming every day. They are coming with the new orders, and if you see that at the almost 44 million these domiciles have been issued, and the Kashmiris are even there is an existential threat to the Kashmiri as a Kashmiri. Because the very important thing is that the military siege have been from the 5th August 2019. If you see, there is a military siege, a heavy build-up in the streets that we are seeing that what was in the 90s, and the new bunkers have been what it called erected around the cities, around the roads, and the things are turning back to what it called when it was the peak of the what it called armed rebellion. There, the things have turned to that at this point of time.
Mukhtar, what about the sentiment inside illegally Indian-occupied Kashmir? Are the Kashmiris still hopeful that they will get their UN-recognized right to self-determination?
Yes, it's not basically the people of Kashmir. They are fighting from last 33 years with the military, Indian military forces and Indian military occupation. The very important thing is that I can tell you it's not hopelessness. It is helplessness. They what it called, what I have feel in the general masses. They have helplessness, not hopelessness.
Okay, Mukhtar, let's talk about the role of the Kashmiris who are living in other parts of the world. Have they done enough to help the cause? How can they put pressure on the world to act in this case?
What I believe that the people, the Kashmiri people, the people around the globe, around the world, they have not done enough. They have to put their efforts together. They have to talk. They have to reach to the what it called the relevant quarters, so that they can raise their voices not only in the West but in the other parts of the world as well, and that too in a united voice.
Mr. Mukhtar Baba, thank you very much for talking to Indus News. We really appreciate your time, and we look forward to talk to you again about the situation over there in Indian-occupied Kashmir. And to talk more about this, we are now joined by Lieutenant General retired Naeem Khalid Lodi, a defense analyst, joining us from Islamabad. General Lodi, thank you very much for your time at Indus News. India's extrajudicial killings of Kashmiri civilians has worsened after the August 5 annexation of the valley. What could be the consequences if this continues and the world keeps its current passive attitude towards this nuclear flashpoint between India and Pakistan?
Thank you very much. I think the consequences are already quite clear because they have lost the hearts and minds of all Kashmiris. You know, in the past there used to be a group of Kashmiris those who would support the Indian government or the, you know, even the Bharatiya Janata Party, but now it's no more. So this is one big consequence of their actions, which are brutal. So we need to understand two lessons of history very clearly. One, that you cannot forcibly annex people of any area against their will. One, and secondly, if you lose their hearts and minds, that they are not with you, then one day or the other, they will get their freedom. So these two things are obvious. The only thing is a matter of time. Yes, today is a day where we should review what all Modi government has been doing in the last 2 years and how effective have been our responses. So I think what they've been doing is that very slowly but surely, according to a certain strategy, they are annexing the remaining areas. Also, carrying out certain political gimmicks, for example, making certain areas as a part of the union and other normal state, abrogating 370, 335A, etc. And they are assimilating the portion of illegally occupied Kashmir, which is with them. We have been quite successful as far as the diplomatic front is concerned, but I think politically, even lawfare point of view and militarily, we have not been very successful as far as the responses are concerned. So we need to review our entire response and make sure that we give a befitting response to all Indian actions so that they come to their senses. And instead of waiting for the international community, which of course we should keep trying, but it is our problem and we have to resolve it ourselves, and we may not rely on the international community forever. Yeah.
So, General Lodhi, New Delhi has been amassing more and more troops in and around Kashmir over the past 2 years. Would this deployment be successful in coercing the Kashmiris into subjugation?
Naturally, you see, if you have one person with a gun and uniform for every 7 to 8 civilians, so that is the concentration of force more than anywhere in the world. I mean, nowhere in the world you will find such a strong force suppressing the will of the people of any area. So they're actually, the fallout is going to be negative. I mean, it will be counterproductive. Instead of the people getting suppressed for all times to come, they will spring up whenever they get an opportunity. Yes, today you are suppressing them. Today you're injuring them. Today you are martyring them. But this cannot go forever. And even a Kashmiri child born today carries that hatred and bitterness because of their actions. The only thing is Kashmiris, they want help. They want assistance. And of course, the international community must come to their help. But we must remember as Pakistanis, it is our basic duty to provide them all sort of help which is required for them to get their freedom and to give them their inalienable right of deciding whether they want to join Pakistan or India. India knows the consequences of any such plebiscite, and that is why they are not, agreeing to that. But United Nations Security Council, along with our friends, China, maybe other countries, we must try to resolve this issue so that these atrocities on our brothers and sisters, those can be terminated.
So, General Lodhi, there is a very interesting aspect to this whole scenario. The regional countries have recently shown that they can play a bigger role in helping solve the crisis, such as in Afghanistan. Why has such an approach and attitude been missing when it comes to Kashmir particularly?
There's a very, very clear reason as far as that is concerned. In Afghanistan, both sides were aggressive. And they were belligerent. And in this case, I think India is much more aggressive than Pakistan. And Pakistan is our policy is a bit of defensive in nature. Unless we also acquire the aggressive nature, you will see yourself that the entire world will come, and they would then see that these two nuclear powers, there's a potential of clash between them. So that is the reason. And secondly, on one side it was America, on the other side it was China and Russia and Pakistan and the neighboring countries. So there was a sort of balance. In case of Kashmir, we have not been able to create that counterbalance to India. So we have to work more in the diplomatic field, but also in the military field, also in the political field.
Lieutenant General Retired Naeem Khalid Lodhi, thank you very much for talking to Indus News. We really appreciate that. And to talk more about this, we are now joined by Air Marshal Retired Masood Akhtar from Islamabad. Thank you very much for your time at Indus News. How can India be held accountable for the decades of oppression, martyring over 400 Kashmiri civilians since 5th of August 2019, and crushing curfews, destroying the valley's economy and people's livelihoods as well?
Valid question, but of course the answer will be longish. I'll try to make it very brief. India has made the mistake of their lifetime. At the strategic chessboard, they have brought all options open on Kashmir issue. In fact, right now, they wanted to make it a bilateral issue. By annulling the 35A and 370, they have internationalized it or made it multilateral. So the net result, there is pressure from America, there is pressure from Saudi Arabia, pressure from UAE, and that is why they ended up talking to Pakistan in the back channel dialogue. All that Pakistan needs to do is do a few things. Number one, have a very, very clear policy on Pakistan, on Kashmir, a maximalist policy of plebiscite and minimalist, where we can ensure rights for all Kashmiris across the border. Minimalist is that they should be able to, around the 4 points, somewhere that demilitarized, give autonomy, joint management, open the borders, and of course, annul 35A and 370. Simultaneously make Kashmir a model for the entire world. That is our part of Kashmir. But most important, our foreign policy exterior maneuver must improve. But even more important, for God's sake, our Kashmir Committee chairman, who has always been appointed for political expediency, should be done actually to make a lot of noise, because our cause is just, it is fair, it is there on the UN Security Council agenda, despite the fact they may be able to, India may have been able to rub our nose on FATF and some other minor issues, but here is a big opportunity that we must cash on by making a lot of noise abroad, everywhere, by exploiting the Kashmiri diaspora across the world who are keen to do this and who have the capability.
Air Marshal Akhtar, the occupied valley is under a military siege for the last 2 years. Do you think, is there any sort of military solution to the Kashmir crisis?
No, we have tried that a number of times in the past. We look at 65, look at Kargil, we could not succeed. Today, India cannot apply its full military power against Pakistan for one very simple reason. The powers that be will not let them do that. They tried a number of times in the backdrop of the Parliament attack, then Bombay attacks, and America did not let them do that. So the total war military power application for, let's say, 20 days is out of question. They tried the surgical strike in the backdrop of false flag operations, the Balakot strike, and in case of the Balakot strike, they tried their last option of air power, and we re-established political and military deterrence in broad daylight versus their attack at night. So they are not going to try this. And please understand, if they want to fight a war in Kashmir, which is a small area, on ground and a small air area above the ground, they take in five of their best corps, because they cannot employ anything more than that because there is not enough space. They bring in 5 squadrons. We can do exactly the same thing, and we can stand our ground. Air power has stood its ground. Ground military power, army has stood its ground. They could not do anything. So military solution is out of sight. But diplomatic solution, now that there is pressure from the powers that be, I think we have a chance, provided we get our house in order, number 1. Number 2, we have the right policy. 3, we have the correct policies at home, put our house in order. I think we can make ground.
So Air Marshal Akhtar, Indian Prime Minister, talking about specifically about Narendra Modi, he hasn't stopped after the annexation of the occupied valley. He has been vigorously seeking to change the demography and is now seeking new delimitation in occupied Jammu and Kashmir, despite the opposition from all the political parties in the disputed region. What could be the possible consequences if Modi manages to redraw electoral lines in the occupied territory?
Number 1, he will not be able to do that. Please remember, Air Vice Marshal Kapil Kak, who is a navigator from the Indian Air Force, retired, and he's a pundit from the valley. He says the 370 annulment and 35A reading down, it is akin to someone jumping out of a multi-storied window, and as he or she is falling, every story, he says, so far so good. So what he has done has not truly worked. The 2 political parties and others that he really bitterly criticized as dynastic and corrupt, they won the District Development Council elections hands down against the BJP. In fact, Muslim Conference made some headway in Jammu also. So he was constrained to call them for a dialogue, because he thinks that what he was wanting to achieve with this political project, he's not been able to achieve. He's not been able to create a king's party. There is insurgency or militancy that is continuing unabated. There is a spike in military recruitment, militancy recruitment, and of course, the economic investment that he thought will come has not come at all. So he called these people that have joined us for delimitation, join us for election, then he can think of restoring statehood. He's got a bargaining chip over there because statehood number 1, 370 number 2, 35A number 3, and union that is getting Ladakh and Jammu and Kashmir back into one. So he has got these four bargaining chips to bargain on. But he has lost the political project that he set forth because people, especially in the valley, are not ready to listen. The day he lifts the curfew, he's fearing a strong backlash, and that is when all the problem will start.
Marshal Retired Masood Akhtar, thank you very much for talking to Indus News. We really appreciate that. And to talk more about this, we have with us now Mishal Hussain Malik, chairperson of the Pakistan Peace and Culture Organization and the wife of Kashmiri leader Yasin Malik. Mishal, thank you for joining us. Do you believe the international community realizes its role and responsibility towards the Kashmir crisis?
We have a very, very strong case internationally, but maybe the people in charge, the international community, are weak lawyers, or they're afraid of India because it's a big economy or it's a big market. But for how long will they save the interests of India? How long will they not, keep their eyes wide shut? So I think it's in the interest of the region's peace and security, and also the global peace, that this nuclear flashpoint issue must be settled once and for all before, God forbid, we have another second nuclear exchange between India and Pakistan. Because if peaceful settlement, if an action against India is not the solution, then what is? Is it war? Is it a full-scale war? Because that is the only option left. And I'm afraid the world can't afford that.
So, Mishal, how is the Kashmir issue affecting regional stability? Is it just Kashmir, or do you see a wider pattern of India's destabilizing actions in the region?
The countries within the region also, right now, how China, which is part of the permanent 5 countries, after 5th of August, China is directly a party to this entire conflict, and India has invited China into this. So it has many parties which are directly involved and affected and have high constraints involved with this matter of this Akhand Bharat narrative, and the neighboring countries also. Bangladesh, Nepal, Tatapani, including that in their map, and then NRC, the Amendment Act, Citizen Amendment Acts, all these things are affecting the internal and regional dynamics along with the Kashmir dispute. So it needs international intervention on the basis of the abrogation and also violating international law.
Mishal Hussain Malik, thank you very much for talking to Indus News. We really appreciate your time. Now moving on, leaders of the All-Party Hurriyat Conference of Kashmir have met United Nations representatives in Islamabad to present them a memorandum. For more details, we have with us our correspondent Manahil Ahmed from Islamabad. Manahil, what do we know about this specific meeting?
The meeting was held at the Serena Business Complex in Islamabad, where the convener for the All Parties Hurriyat Conference, Faiz Naqshbandi, presented a memorandum to the United Nations humanitarian coordinator, Julian Harness, where they called upon the United Nations to ask New Delhi to reinstate Article 370 and 35 in occupied Kashmir. They highlighted the atrocities that are committed by the Indian occupation forces in occupied Kashmir, such as rape, torture, killings, and where Hurriyat leaders are languishing in Indian jails for years now, and the use of pellet guns, torture, forced disappearances, and all of these human rights violations that are being committed by the Indian forces in occupied Kashmir have been presented in front of the UN representatives today in Islamabad. The All Parties Hurriyat Conference also asked the United Nations to act upon the resolution and to grant grant the people of Kashmir the right to self-determination and a free and fair plebiscite. They reminded the United Nations of their responsibility, to grant the people of Kashmir the right to self-determination and to extend their support to the people of Kashmir and to highlight the atrocities and to call upon New Delhi and to take action against the atrocities that New Delhi is committing in occupied Kashmir.
Manahil Ahmed, our correspondent from Islamabad, thank you very much for the updates. Now moving on, Pakistanis and Kashmiris around the world are observing Black Day today on the second anniversary of India's illegal revocation of occupied Kashmir's special status.
Protest rallies, seminars and conferences are being held on both sides of the line of control and across the world against New Delhi's unlawful action. Talking to the media at a rally in Islamabad, President Dr. Arif Alvi said Pakistan will not hold any talks with India until it rescinds its illegal steps of the 5th of August 2019.
Pakistan will not rest until Kashmir is liberated. India has adopted the same strategy of changing Kashmir's demography as Israel has been doing in Palestine. By settling outsiders to change the demography, India wants to exploit the situation of Kashmir to form a government there.
In his message, Prime Minister Imran Khan said India's state-sponsored terrorism is destroying regional stability. Khan called on the international community to hold India accountable. Khan reaffirmed Pakistan's commitment to the Kashmir cause until it reaches a just solution in light of the UN Charter. In a statement, Chief of the Army Staff General Qamar Javed Bajwa said peace is not possible until the dispute is solved as per aspiration of Kashmiris. Earlier, a 1-minute silence was observed across the country while traffic was also halted for a minute. Meanwhile, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation has called for the revocation of India's unilateral steps of August 2019. In a statement, the General Secretariat said the steps seek to alter the internationally recognized disputed status of the territory.
Pakistan's top diplomat in Turkey says allowing Kashmiris to decide their future is a litmus test for Indian democracy. Ambassador Mohammad Saida Sajjad Qazi urged the international community to act against India's violations in the occupied valley. In an interview, Qazi said the Indian troops deprive and brutalize the Kashmiris. He said the occupying forces are oppressing any means of registering a protest. Qazi said on August the 5th, 2019, India clearly conveyed to the world that it does not care about the Kashmiris.
August 5th, 2019 marks a very black day in the history of Jammu and Kashmir because India has now clearly told the world that it does not care about the wishes of the Kashmiris, it does not care about the United Nations Security Council resolutions. All it cares is to use all means available to it, force, fraud, as well as these pseudo-constitutional efforts to deprive the Kashmiris of their right of self-determination.
In India, a complete shutdown marks the second year since Muslim-majority Kashmir was stripped of its autonomy, while Indian troops patrolled the streets of the Himalayan region to thwart rallies against India's illegal actions of August the 5th, 2019. What in this report?
On this day in 2019, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government withdrew Article 370 and revoked the valley's statehood. On the occasion, former Chief of Jammu and Kashmir, Mehbooba Mufti, led a protest in Srinagar. Accompanied by several party leaders, Mufti demanded that killings and atrocities in Kashmir be stopped and prisoners be released.
This is a day of mourning for the people of Jammu and Kashmir. We are bereaving today. The era of atrocities, violence and persecution that began in 2019 by the BJP government has angered the people of Jammu and Kashmir. It is sad that the BJP is celebrating this day while Kashmir mourns.
Witnesses said that troops manned checkpoints in parts of Srinagar, which has been a hotbed of separatist activity. Meanwhile, locals say they have been promised several developments, but nothing has changed on the ground.
There is a lot of unemployment here still. We have to do something about it. Economy will improve only when employment is taken care of.
The All Parties Hurriyat Conference has called for a complete blackout at 8 o'clock in the evening. However, some traders told the media that Indian police have forced them to keep their shops open.
It's time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Welcome back. The Taliban have refuted U.S. envoy KHALILZAD'S assertions that they are seeking a lion's share of power in a future government. In an interview, Taliban spokesperson Zabiullah Mujahid termed KHALILZAD'S statement as his personal view. He said the group is not after a monopoly of power or eyeing a key share. Mujahid noted that Taliban want an accord that can observe the Islamic aspirations of the people. He said there will definitely be a complete Islamic government and all sides will have to accept this. The spokesperson added all Afghans will be given a share in that government. Meanwhile, the group claimed to have captured the Kang district in southwestern Nimroz provinces. Earlier, the US condemned the Taliban's attack on Afghan defense minister, which left 8 civilians dead. Russian and Uzbek special forces are conducting joint live-fire drills at the Tarmez practice range along southern Uzbek-Afghan border. The drills involve about 1,500 troops from both the countries. The Russian Defense Ministry says Moscow will also deploy supersonic strategic bombers in the joint exercise. The bombers will fly to the drill site from the Russian city of Saratov while being accompanied by MiG-29 fighter jets from the Uzbek Air Force. The joint drills are being held amid fears in both the countries that a worsening security situation in Afghanistan could spill over into Central Asia. Moscow says that it would also send a much bigger military contingent to Tajikistan for separate trilateral exercises. Myanmar's ambassador to the UN has alerted the world body to a reported massacre by the military regime. In a letter, Kiamoturn told the Secretary General that 40 bodies had been found in northwestern Myanmar in recent weeks, including some showing signs of torture. The general, who seized power in February this year, have denied the allegations. The country has been in turmoil since the army removed the civilian leadership and launched a crackdown on dissent that has killed more than 900 people. Kiamoturn had refused to leave his post despite being fired by the military. Israel has launched airstrikes on Lebanon in response to the alleged rocket attacks from the Lebanese territory yesterday. The Israeli military also blamed the state of Lebanon for the shelling. The military said its air raids targeted alleged rocket launch sites and other infrastructure. It added it also struck an area that had seen rocket launches in the past. The military warned against further attempts to harm Israeli civilians. Yesterday, Israeli forces fired artillery shells into Lebanon. Israeli occupation forces have demolished 3 more Palestinian houses in the occupied West Bank's Hebron city. Palestinian media said the houses in Sire town belong to a single family. They said Israel demolishes Palestinian structures almost on a daily basis to achieve demographic control of the occupied territories. Meanwhile, the forces have also arrested 10 Palestinians in the overnight raids across the West Bank. Witnesses said the troops invaded homes in Hebron, Tubas, Jenin and Ramallah cities. 2 Palestinians were also injured in Tubas as soldiers forced their way into Al-Farah refugee camp in Jordan Valley. Iran has condemned the accusations that it harms the security of the naval traffic in the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman. In a letter to the International Maritime Organization, Iran's ambassador to the UK termed the allegations politically motivated.
Tensions are simmering in the region after 2 crew members were killed in a drone attack on an Israeli-managed ship in the Gulf of Oman. Yesterday, a Panama-flagged vessel was also briefly hijacked in the same waters. In a letter to the UN Security Council, Tehran said artificial maritime incidents are being created in the region. Earlier, British Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab said the United Kingdom and the United States are united in condemning Iran's attack on the Israeli tanker. While the U.S. State Department spokesperson said Washington believes Iranians hijacked a tanker in the Gulf of Oman. But Ned Price said Washington is not in a position to confirm.
The number of global coronavirus infections has hit another grim milestone of 200 million, with more than 4.2 million deaths. Brazil's caseload has topped 20 million, with its death toll over 559,000. More in this report.
Countries across Asia are grappling with their worst coronavirus outbreaks of the pandemic. That is spurred by the highly contagious Delta variant and low vaccine rates. The World Health Organization says low-income countries have only been able to administer 1.5 doses for every 100 people due to lack of supply, while the high-income countries administered around 50 doses for every 100 people in May, and that number has since doubled. As the gap between vaccinations in wealthy and poor countries widens, the health body is calling for a halt on vaccine boosters until at least the end of September. However, the United States has rebuffed the call from the organization to impose booster shot moratorium, saying that it presents a false choice.
We also, in this country, have enough supply to ensure that every American has access to a vaccine. We will have enough supply to ensure if the FDA decides that boosters are recommended for a portion of the population, to provide those as well. We believe we can do both, and we don't need to make that choice.
A European Commission has approved a contract with the United States firm Novavax for the purchase of up to 200 million of its potential vaccine. Britain says it will offer all 16 and 17-year-olds their first dose of the Pfizer vaccine. Meanwhile, while fully vaccinated travelers returning to England from France will no longer have to quarantine. Over in Australia, as Sydney reported its worst day amid Delta strain devastation, authorities say the country faces vaccine supply glitches.
The challenge is the Delta strain. That is the one different component. That the Delta strain is like nothing we've seen, and that's why the vaccine is our key tool. Fortunately, we do have that tool now available in Australia, but we are constrained with some types of supply, obviously, which we've been talking about. But getting jabs into arms will massively help us reduce those case numbers.
Japan has warned that infections are rising at an unprecedented pace. New cases have hit a record high in Tokyo, overshadowing the Olympics. Meanwhile, a new study shows that COVID-19 may not affect the lungs of vaccinated patients as much as that of unvaccinated ones.
In Pakistan, coronavirus has claimed 60 more lives, taking the death toll to 23,635. The health ministry said more than 5,600 people tested positive for the virus overnight. Pakistan's COVID-19 positivity rate has crossed 9% for the first time in nearly 3 months. The ministry said there are over 77,000 active cases, while more than 4,000 are critical. It said the infections tally has crossed 1,053,000. In cricket, New Zealand will tour Pakistan for the first time in 18 years to play 3 one-day internationals and 5 T20 internationals. The Pakistan Cricket Board has announced the schedule for the tour starting from September the 11th. The ODI series will begin on the 17th of September at the Rawalpindi Cricket Stadium. It will be followed by a T20 series a week later at the Gaddafi Stadium in Lahore. In Tokyo Olympics, China, Germany, the US and Australia are among others to clinch gold medals on the 13th day of the Games. China leads the medal standings with 33 golds, followed by the US with 27 and hosts Japan on 21. More in this report.
Day 13 of the Games is scheduled to feature a total of 27 gold medal events. Chinese teenager Quan Hongcheng has won the gold medal in the women's 10-meter platform diving on Day 13 of the Games. The 14-year-old is the event's youngest contender and also the youngest in Team China. In boxing, Russian Albert Bates-Gradsevev beat American Duke Reagan to win the men's featherweight final. Germany's Florian Wellbrock won the gold in the men's 10-kilometer marathon swimming competition. The U.S. bagged gold medals in the women's canoe single and the men's shot put events. Meanwhile, Australia claimed its gold in men's skateboarding and kayak double 1,000 meters event. New Zealand's Lisa Carrington won another gold in the women's kayak single 500 meters competition. Portugal's first gold of the Games came with Pedro Picardo winning the men's triple jump. Hungary's Sandor Toka won the gold medal in the men's kayak single 200 meters event. Elsewhere, Hansel Parchment of Jamaica won the 110 meters hurdle gold.
And now for weather updates, we have Naila with us.
Thank you. We're going to start off with Abu Dhabi, where the weather is expected to be extremely hot with temperatures rising to 41 degrees Celsius. While in Amsterdam, a thin veil of clouds are rolling across the sky with temperatures at 22 degrees Celsius. If we head to Ankara, the weather is sunny with temperatures at 37 degrees Celsius. Moving down under to Auckland, the temperature is chilly at 16 degrees Celsius with a thin layer of clouds floating in the sky. Now, if you are traveling to Bangkok, there will be rainy weather with temperatures around 32 degrees Celsius. In Beijing, clouds are partially veiling the sun with temperatures at 30 degrees Celsius, while Beirut will be experiencing some sunny weather with temperatures at 33 degrees Celsius. Berliners will be experiencing temperatures at 24 degrees Celsius, with clouds making the weather even more pleasant. Heading to Cairo, the sun is out and it will be hot with temperatures at 42 degrees Celsius. Down under in Canberra, the temperatures are at 13 degrees Celsius and thin clouds are in the sky. In Islamabad, temperatures are at 33 degrees Celsius, accompanied by thunderstorms, while in Jakarta, the temperatures are steady at 32 degrees Celsius with some rain in the forecast. That's all for now. Back to you.
Thank you, Naila, for the weather updates. And that is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.